Well, good evening, everybody. I'm just getting ready to come on the air and I get some message about something. So I hope everybody's in here. It said, I don't know what it said, but it said it looks like this thing was deleted on Facebook or something. If you're looking for me on Facebook and I'm not there, I don't think there's anything I can do about it right now. Anyway, I'm Michael Gantt. This is Night Mike, and I have a very special guest coming up in just a couple of minutes. But I wanted to give you some program notes for the next couple of weeks. Got some special guests coming in and joining me, and I'm looking forward to it and introducing them to you. The first one coming up here on the 2nd of September. I think that's what, the Labor Day or the day after? No, Labor Day's on Monday. Anyway, September 2nd. My friend Kevin Skipworth from Panama City Beach, Florida, is going to be joining us. Kevin is in Florida, but he's from my hometown in North Carolina, and he moved down several years ago with he and his bride down to Panama City. They got a great ministry going on down there, and I wanted to introduce him to you and some of the rest of my friends. So Kevin will be here on Live Mic on the 2nd of September. And then I'm having Paul and Misty Nadeau back. This guy I'm telling you, you're going to love this guy. If you've not seen Paul, I think I've had him on here a couple of times, but he and his wife, Misty, have launched up in the Northeast Kingdom into an amazing ministry called Faith Haven Ranch. Such an amazing testimony about God's provision, God opening doors to fulfill a dream. And Paul and Misty have pursued it, and God just is opening doors. They're going to be having a home for moms and their children to come in. They're hoping to have maybe a center for people who are in recovery. They're having a Harvest Fest, which is this big concert that they do every fall up in the Northeast Kingdom. Join me on September 4th at 8:30 on Night Mike and meet Paul and Misty Nadeau. I think you're going to be blessed by them. And then on the 23rd of September, evangelist Barry Greer is going to be with me. Barry is also from my home stomping grounds down in the Carolinas. He is he's an evangelist with Remnant Harvest Ministries. He's an evangelist, a preacher, a teacher, a missionary, a singer, a teacher of God's word. And Barry is he's about my age, but he acts much younger. And so I'd love to have you meet Barry. And Andrew, I just see you popped in there. Apparently Facebook blinked out just about the time we went on the air. And I don't know what to do about it. If I can do anything on the, no, they've just deleted it. So I guess we're not on Facebook tonight. Anyway, on September 25th, Andrew, you can do me a favor. You can go on my page and let everybody know that we've got a problem. Thank you, Robin. Robin just jumped in. Share that link on Facebook so that people can come and join us here on YouTube. This young lady is a ball of energy. Some of you remember that I was in a movie a few years ago called The 211 Home, and this young lady was just a little girl. I don't know, 10, maybe 9, 10. And she played an amazing role, actually as my sister in a flashback. And she's just an amazing young lady. Well, the 211 Home was the launching pad for her career. She's now appearing in family-friendly films from Angel Studios and a number of other studios. She's a real live wire. Her name is Kaylee Wooten. And she's a rising star in Christian films, and I want you to have the opportunity to meet Kaylee. Beautiful young lady. And mom and dad are pastors of a church River Church out in Salem, Oregon. And she's in Bible college now, not a little girl anymore, and starring in movies. So Kelly Wooten will be with me on Night Mike on September 25th. Well, I want to introduce you to my guest tonight. Pastor Michael McCosker. Hey, Michael, how are you tonight?
I'm well, Pastor Mike. How are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm all right. I've got Andy and Hannah, Handy and Robin on Facebook, letting everybody know that I'm not on Facebook tonight. Something happened and they disconnected us just as we went on the air, and that's the way Facebook can be sometimes. So you're all the way over across the river in Keene, New Hampshire, in your new home. You guys haven't been there very long, have you?
No, we bought the house a year ago, May.
Mm-hmm.
Moved in a year ago, right after camp. So the second week of August,
Uh-huh.
we left camp, and Tina and her mom were in Tennessee, and I came home and got bedrooms ready.
Yeah.
And we've been, it's been a renovation project since we've gotten into it, but we're getting closer.
Yeah. Yeah.
To being done, kind of, sort of, not really.
Let me tell you what, I've been in this house almost 35 years, and we're coming close to getting done. So, I don't want to discourage you, but man, I was teasing everybody today. I've been involved in a little carpentry project around the house here. I've noticed some clapboard, some siding that was starting to get a little shady looking, and I kept putting it off and putting it off. My wife asked me, she said, "Why are you putting it off?" I said, "Because when you look at the side of your house and you see siding that is getting, starting to rot, starting to peel and everything, you know what's behind that. And you know that there's no such thing as pulling off one piece of clapboard and replacing it." I should have put a picture up. It's been a 2-day project of replacing underlayment, and we turned a door into a window, and it was way more than one piece of siding I had to fix. And so it's this house was a project when we bought it, and it's still a project. So don't want to discourage you or anything, but that's the way it is. Now,
Yeah,
Michael, no, go ahead. No,
no, it's not discouraging. It, when we bought the house, it was probably one of the ugliest houses in Keene.
Yeah.
And really looked inhabitable. Actually, wildlife was living in it, as well as a lot of vagrants would pack up in it. So there was a lot of moving stuff out before we could even start working. But it's quickly becoming a cute little house, and not the prettiest in Keene, but it certainly not the ugliest either.
Yeah,
so.
Well, I've seen the pictures. You're doing a great job on it, just kind of one room at a time. Yeah. Well, we did that for a lot of years.
And about the time you get done, you start over.
Well, about the time we get done, we're probably going to sell it to my daughter. Just let her. She and her husband. Yeah, let her do it. And we're gonna try to find something a little smaller that doesn't take so much upkeep to it. And that's the same thing. I did the same thing this year for the first time, and I don't know how many years. I bought a brand new car because I said I'm tired of rolling around on the ground keeping these old beaters running. Yeah. So I finally admitted that I'm not up to it anymore, and that was a hard decision, but couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. So I bought a car and made sure I had a big warranty on it. So if something breaks, I just take it up there and say, you fix your car.
Yeah.
But so I want to ask you, we've known each other a day or two.
Yeah, I think what was it? March, would have been January of '84.
Wow, that's a day or two.
That I started attending Agape. Bill Wade brought me to church the first time, and it's interesting because when I went to Agape, I was looking for something. And the backstory. And,
yeah, right.
It had been a couple years quest of trying to figure out who God was. And it started in the Catholic Church, United Pentecostal Church, some Baptist churches, but no one really ever talked to me about this person, Jesus.
Yeah.
And the first time I walked into Agape, I was struck by, I'm looking at like all these different men in it, and you could see Jesus in them alive. And that sucked me in, because for the first time I realized it wasn't the God of the cosmos, wasn't the God on the crucifix, He is the living God. And but yeah, so 1984, we've kind of our journey walking
Yeah,
together.
of course I remember Bill Waite, who was
Yeah,
anybody who's in here who knew Bill know that he was a special kind of guy,
yeah,
like a bull in a china shop, really, but but had a heart for Jesus and had a heart for guys.
yeah.
Had well, not guys and gals. He had a. I know
Anybody. Yeah,
he used to show up at church with a pickup truck, and I mean literally a pickup truck full of kids,
yeah.
and uh, and so yeah, and in 1984, I remember a lot of the men that you would have encountered, and one of the things in 1984 that era, I actually came to Agape in '81. Most of the guys you would have met started out as alcoholics or drug addicts. We had most of our core group at that time were right off the streets. I mean, we struggled to find leadership because some of them were so young, and we had guys, coming to church and serving as a deacon and smoking pot, and it,
Well, a lot of
it
them
was
came
a
out of that
process.
Jesus hippie movement, didn't
Yeah,
they?
right. Well, hey, listen, I came out of that. Somebody asked me one time if I remembered the Jesus Revolution. When the movie came out, Jesus Revolution, Greg Laurie and
Yeah.
Chuck Smith and all of that. They said, "Do you remember it?" I said, "Remember it." I was right in the middle of it. I
You took
was
out the New Life Singers album cover, right?
Yeah, right. Show me that long beard and a long hair. Yeah. And yeah, Barbara and I both grew up in that era of the 60s. We were married in 69. So yeah, we remember the Jesus Revolution very, very well. It was quite a time. So you came in, you do have quite a story. Your brother was Peter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, your brother Peter was murdered, and your mom was very badly injured. Tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, it's amazing. I'll tell people, pick up, go to the Brattleboro Reformer, look in the archives for April 20th, 1982.
Yeah.
And the article read murder, attempted murder, suicide. And
Mm.
but it really, it obviously started long before that. My mother and my biological father, they were divorced when I was young. Right before my father had redeployed back to Vietnam, they had bought a house in Hinsdale. Why in
Hmm.
Hinsdale? It's the
Yeah.
only place they could find a house. But
Hmm.
my mother wanted to be back in New Hampshire, and while he was in Vietnam, the stuff I didn't know till I was an adult. He just wasn't a good person. And
Yeah.
so my mother had filed for divorce, and when he came back, he'd already had a new family, and is weird. But
Mm.
but when I was young, my mother had met a guy and didn't know a lot about him, and but married him.
Hmm.
And I think for the most part, looking for some security,
Yeah.
for her kids, single mom making $50 at Mammoth Mart back at that time a week. It
Yeah.
was hard, and my father was always after her, calling DCF, and just trying to get her in trouble. So,
Hmm.
so she marries this guy, Jim Kirkwood, and didn't know much about him, and quickly realized it was probably the biggest mistake of her life. What she didn't know is Jim was a bad alcoholic. Um, and when he wasn't drunk, he was more miserable than when he was drunk.
Mm.
And so we lived from, I think I was like in the first grade, right up through the eighth grade of, growing up in this home where every weekend was just a drunken fest. And most of the week, he would be drinking a lot. And it was just a horrible place. And I'll tell people, like, by the time I was 12 years old, I was getting drunk all the time, because he would be hosting keg parties and they'd send me out to the back of the pickup to fill up the pitchers, and I'd just get under the keg and open it up
Yeah.
and and I just remember it, 12 years old, 13 years old, I just pass out stone drunk. Um, there's a lot of domestic violence in the home during that time. He was very violent. He would totally overturn the house. Um, I told Pete, I was physically abused by him. My mother,
Mhm.
and so it was a horrible upbringing. But when I was in the eighth grade, my mother had finally, like, she'd had enough. She was able to squirrel away enough money, and she filed for divorce.
Mhm.
And we were thinking like the chains had been taken off, and everything was great. But on that Monday night, April 19th, 1982, um, in the evening, that evening, we get a phone call. Hey, Jim is on his way. He's drunk and he's got a loaded gun.
Oh boy.
And so, instantly my mother calls the police. I go and I lock the door. I let my brother Peter's down in the garage. He had an old, I think it was a 67. Um, what the heck was, no, not the Fiat. It'll come to me. An old
Yeah.
Ford. He was
Yeah.
rebuilding, and
Hmm.
so, but no sooner did my mother get off the phone with the police, and Jim had pulled into the driveway and quickly broke open the door using the butt of his 30-06.
Uh-huh.
He came in, worked his way into the house. My older brother Peter, whom you mentioned, and my mother was trying to talk him down. He was as drunk could be. We found out later after the autopsy that the coroner said they didn't know how he could even walk with the amount of alcohol he
Yeah.
had in his system. Um, and then I believe it was a demon possession personally, but
Right.
um, and this back and forth talking was going on quite a bit. My mother had told my younger brother Matthew and I to get out of the house, so I went into my bedroom to grab a couple of clothes. I was going to go across the road to my friend Jeff's, and as I'm grabbing a couple of things, I hear my brother Peter say, I know you're going to shoot me, so when you do, put it between my eyes so I don't feel anything. And then, boom, the first shot.
Wow.
To that, I dove over my bed, crawled underneath it, in hopes of hiding. And there's a lot of chaos and noise. And I look out from under my bed, and my stepfather's standing in the door of my bedroom, and we're locked eye to eye. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking I'm dead. Now it's me, but it's
Mhm.
as if he didn't even see me. And honestly, I believe Jesus was standing there blinding his eyes. Um,
Mhm.
and he turned around, he walked back out toward the living room, and then I heard another shot, and then another shot, and then what sounded like him running down the stairs. I was just paralyzed in fear.
Right.
And then I hear my mother, Michael, get out here. I need your help. So I go out and I help her, and she's got a towel on her chin. She's like, you need to call the rescue right now, call the police. So I'm making
Mhm.
calls, and, you know, and we lived in one of those split level ranches where you kind of had that look through from the kitchen to the living room where the
Right.
stairway went
Mhm.
down. And then I looked down the stairway, and that's when I realized what I thought was somebody running down the stairs was my stepfather falling down the stairs after he had shot himself.
Mhm.
At that point, I figured my brother Peter had been shot, but I hadn't seen him. So I helped my mother kind of get squared away. But then I had to go down to the garage to open up the door so the police who had just pulled in could get into the house. And then as I was going down the stairs, that's when I saw my brother Peter um,
Mhm.
was dead at that point. So that was a moment in my life that you know lives etched in your mind forever.
Right.
And at that point in my life, we didn't go to church. My mother would tell us we were Catholic, and which meant we'd go once a year maybe. So
Mhm.
like there was trying to deal with all this,
Mhm.
hurt
Where
and
where
pain.
was Matthew at this point?
So Matthew, well, he at the first shot, he was standing in the kitchen looking through at my
Mhm.
stepfather, and he actually Matthew saw my brother Peter take that shot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's something Matt lives with and struggles with.
Mm.
Um, and then he ran out the back door of the house after the first shot.
Good.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
he went to my best friend's house where I was eventually going to go.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
no.
So one of the caveats of this story that you didn't know until later is that Peter had accepted Christ shortly before this incident took place.
Yes. I didn't even know, I didn't know about that until it was 2.5 years later after I met Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so 2 weeks, it was Easter Sunday before he died. I think April 12th, it wasn't even 2 weeks, a week
Mm-hmm.
and a day or something. Peter had been invited to take part in the Word of Life basketball tournament with Tom
Mm-hmm.
Waite, Bill's son.
Right.
And
Right.
Peter and his girlfriend Melissa, before one of the tournament games, they would do an altar, someone would speak and they'd do an altar call. Peter and Melissa went forward and he received Christ. And, I take so much comfort in that because, you know, the word of God tells us God knows all of our days, they're numbered. Peter's
Yeah.
day was coming,
Mm.
and he softened his heart to the gospel. So,
Um,
for me, the comfort is even, when I was 16, when I first met Jesus, cool, I'm going to be with my brother in heaven someday. So his life isn't over. He just got there a little quicker than me, but
yeah.
an amazing story. And actually, for what I'm told, the Word of Life still shares Peter's story in a
Yeah.
lot of their different events. So
Right. Yeah. It's an amazing thing. You know, I think before I ever actually met you, Bill Waite told me about Peter accepting the Lord at a word of life.
yeah,
I think Bill Waite's the one that took him, isn't he?
he was, Bill, and actually when Tommy was up to do Bill's service,
Right.
Tommy brought me the picture from the Word of Life trophy presentation because this ragtag group of kids from Hinsdale went on to win the national championship
Mm-hmm.
in honor of my brother. They committed themselves to my brother's memory and playing, and so he gave me the picture of them receiving that trophy.
Wow,
And
that's amazing.
so, and I've actually got the trophy in my office now. It's a
Wow.
little old and a little dirty, but yeah, it's just a really cool
Yeah.
story how some of that played
Mm-hmm.
out. Tommy was in Texas at a Word of Life event, and the speaker told a story about Pete.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I get emotional.
That's all. I
But
get it.
so after this, Tommy goes up to him and says, "Hey, Pete was my friend. I brought him to Word of Life."
Yeah.
And so Tommy was able to, identify with someone who was talking about some kid they never met and
Yeah.
give them some context. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
That,
it's,
that's amazing.
yeah,
So that was in 1982.
yes,
Yeah. And you showed up at our church, Agape Christian Fellowship, in 1984.
yeah,
Is
January.
that yeah,
Yep.
January. Yeah, you came in January in that old building.
It was so cold.
Oh my goodness. Our heating system is really good now, but boy, then it was pretty
Yeah,
sketchy. It was pretty sketchy.
yeah.
Um,
And as I recall, it was right at the point the witness practices were gearing up, and
right. Yeah.
so I wasn't even a believer at this point. I got involved with the witness, and
Mm.
then you had Mark Wormwood working
Yep.
with you with the youth group kids, and
Uh-huh.
Mark saw me and latched on to me, and
Yep.
and then it was March 4th, 1984, that
Yeah.
I met Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark had just come back from Florida. I think he was at Bradenton in the Bible school down there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said Mark has quite a testimony, and I sent him down to Florida to get him out away from the people that he was hanging out. It turned out to be a
Yeah.
good thing. And then he was working with our youth program. You came in at a time when we had a really large group of teens, in the church, and you
Yeah.
sort of folded in it. Of course, my oldest son and you are about the same age. What's
I'm about 4 years older than
Are
Brian,
you
but
about 4 years? I
yeah,
don't remember. Yeah, I
but
didn't
we
realize
really,
you were that decrepit.
yeah. Yeah, I keep telling people, man, I am 7 years. No, yeah, 7 years from 65. Like,
You count the days, are you?
I'm at that point where, the top of that mountain's looking pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, I be honest with you, Michael. Every once in a while, we get a note or something, and as a matter of fact, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've buried a number of the members of the New Life Singers,
yeah,
the youth choir that I started back in the '70s,
yeah,
and I never imagined that I would outlive some of those kids.
yeah.
Uh, but we were talking about some folks and uh, the number of young people that have come through our ministry in the 50 some odd years that we do it, because that are now, like yourself, involved in ministry. It's the most exciting thing to me
Hmm.
of all the years of ministry and all the things that we've been privileged to do. It's been to see young men like you and Mark and so many of my own son, now two sons, who are involved in ministry. I can't think of a better legacy that we can leave when we leave this world than to leave people who are going to step into our place and continue the work.
Amen.
So you 1984, I know for a while you worked, you led our youth ministry for a while at Agape, and then you let's see, when did you go to school? You went to Zion.
1986. Well, it's funny because let me just kind of back up on that. Like,
No.
1984, I met Christ in March, and then that summer, you were running camps up at Wabanog.
Yeah,
And you and Mark were like, "Oh, you got to come work at camp."
right.
And then it was White River Camp after that. But it was,
Oh yeah,
during that summer, right before camp, I was praying and really felt, God calling me to preach. One of the things that was kind of instilled in me when I was 14, first seeking God, my mom and my grandmother insisted that I get counseling, and so they sent me to the Catholic priest in the parish in New York City when we moved down there to get away from Hinsdale. And
yeah,
one of the really unsung heroes in the Catholic Church, right? Like, we hear all the horror stories, you don't hear a lot of good
right.
ones. But Father West, he was a great guy. He invested a lot. Take me mini golf, and we go to Mets games. I don't know how good that was, but but he just spent a lot of time
Mets
with me.
games. Well, he couldn't be perfect.
No, but so one night he's like, Mike, God's got a plan for your life. I think he wants you to be a priest. Now, I'm 14, 15 with all of the raging hormones of a 14, 15.
That was the furthest. Nope, no.
Like, I look at him, I say, Father West, I'll do anything for God, but I'm gonna get married. Like, so he's like, oh, okay. And so I had this sense like God's got a plan for my life. So then 2 years later, I become a Christian, and I'm praying, God, I know you got a plan for my life. You might as well tell me what it is so I can start preparing for it. Like, I didn't have deep theological prayers at that time, but
right.
Jesus still loves me, right? So then I end up at camp, and I'm talking with your wife Barbara, kind of like trying to figure this out. Like, I think God's called me to preach. What does that mean? What do I do? And you came walking through, and Barbara's like, "Hey, Mike, Michael thinks he's called to preach." And you looked at me and you go, "You have to go to Zion Bible Institute." Never asked a question about it. And so as I found out where Zion was, 1986, I graduated high school. A couple months before, I applied to Zion. And the end of August, went to Zion. And I'm not sure why you wanted me to go to Zion until I got there and I realized how kind of strict and disciplined they are. And I needed that in my life.
Now, were they in Barrington by that point?
My first year was their first full year in Barrington.
Yeah, because we were in East Providence when I went there.
Yeah, I didn't have the joy of that.
the prehistoric age.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, I felt there's a lot of good schools. There's a few schools that I think really prepare men for ministry, and Zion was one of them. Now North Point, and they're still doing that.
Yeah.
Zion was one of them, and I also knew you didn't have a lot of money,
Right.
and Zion was the place to go for a guy who wanted to learn ministry, and
Yeah.
and didn't have access to a lot of money.
I
And so,
showed up on campus with a $20 bill in my pocket.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
after working all summer, wasn't very disciplined.
Yeah. Well, at that point, you weren't thinking that much beyond uh,
No.
getting the next paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were in Barrington for was it?
Graduated in '89.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I took a youth pastor position in Warwick for a couple of years.
right.
In '91, Tina and I were married in June of '91. And then that summer, I was laid off from my job in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And because my youth pastor position was volunteer
Right.
kind of thing. But
I've
so
done a few of those.
yeah. And I was laid off in '91. The recession, people don't always remember the recession hit the country pretty hard. And
Yeah.
there were no jobs to have. In a month's time, I put in over 300 applications.
Wow.
And I was offered one job by the manager of Buildings Jewelry, who wanted me to be a collector and go collect on bad debt in the projects
Ooh.
throughout Rhode Island.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I might look stupid, but I promise you, that's about it. And
Yeah, that's about as low as you can get on the totem
yeah.
pole there. And
So
and in those projects in Warwick, when I was in Zion, we used to go. I don't think we went every Saturday, but or some people maybe went every Saturday, but we used to go and do outreaches in those projects in Warwick. And
yeah,
even in the 60s and early 70s, that was some pretty sketchy
yeah.
place to be.
Yeah. So the end of '91, Tina and I, I mean, my unemployment was running out. And
Mm-hmm.
she was working at K Jewelers at the mall, but we
Mm-hmm.
were like, let's go home because I knew at least at that time CNS was hiring every day.
Right. Yeah.
And I could go and get a job there, and Tina could get a job she was already promised a job working at Keene State if we
Mm-hmm.
moved home. So, but we move home and we move into my mother's trailer. So, I
Yeah.
mean, just the ultimate in humility, like, it's, but at that point we started right back up at Agape. We were, as teenagers, we went to
Mm-hmm.
Agape, and due to a series of circumstances, at the beginning of '92, the youth leader stepped out. You asked
Yeah.
me to step in and just kind of cover things for a little bit, and that lasted, I think, until '98, '99.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I had a great time with the teams that I
Yeah.
had, and
Yeah.
many great relationships still, one of which
Yeah.
your daughter was one of my youth group kids.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, my grandson married your daughter.
Yes. Yes.
I have to tell you this. When I found out that Gabriel and Rachel were getting pretty serious and talking about getting married, I said to him, I said, Gabe, I said, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like marrying your sister. I mean, that's how close knit our families were. I mean, you
Yeah.
lived in our house
Yeah.
before you got married. Part of that time, I remember you bunked in with Brian
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. Brian's one of my closest. Brian and his wife Becky are some of our closest friends. So
Yeah, yeah,
and I've always looked at you as a spiritual father. So
yeah.
it's been a very close relationship. So when Rachel and Gabe got together, and like they really had a lot of deep conversations about that before they committed to the dating or whatever they were calling it. Like they were like, look, this doesn't just affect you and I if it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Our parents are great friends. Like
yeah,
we got to make sure that you know we go into this and we start a relationship and it doesn't work, that we don't let it affect everything else. So they,
Yeah.
they had such a good maturity
Yeah.
about how they approached that. It was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, it was, it just, it's one of those things, it's amazing how some families God ties together.
Yeah,
You don't see it coming, but you've been a part of our lives, like you say, for since 1984,
yeah.
and so you came home, you served in our youth, running our youth program for a number of years, and then what happened after that?
So, I was wanting to move into a pastoral role, and Agape was pretty solid at the time.
Hmm.
And North Hinsdale Community Church, Rick Morton had been serving there, and he
Hmm.
had resigned. So I'd reached out to Calvin and Lynn Lowe, who I've known since I was
Right, right.
moved to Hinsdale, right? And
Yeah,
and I just offered to, give them some pulpit support while they tried to figure things out. So the first Sunday Rick wasn't there, they invited me to preach, and it was a pretty horrendous sermon as I remember.
mm,
But then they invited me back, and I'm thinking, man, these guys are really desperate.
yeah.
Like, so the second week, Tina and I show back up, and our kids were real little at the time, and I preach again, and they call me to the board meeting after, and so I go up, and I'm like, oh boy, man, they're gonna just rip me because this is bad, and
Yeah.
but they're like, so what are your intentions? I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm gonna go get lunch now. No, no, they're
That's as
like,
far ahead as you were thinking. I was lunch.
like, what are your intentions? Do
Mhm.
what are you doing for the next 5, 10, whatever years? Do you
Mhm.
want to be our pastor? And I'm like, "No, what?" And so and we didn't, like, it wasn't one of those we need to go into a deep season of prayer. We just knew that was what God was putting before us to do. And so I showed up to just help with pulpit support, and I've been there. I'm in my 26th year now.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It is amazing. I tell a lot of young men who, they want to enter the ministry, they want to, possibly pastor and everything. And so they start searching. Matter of fact, I just talked to a young man this week, and I said, just do ministry right where you are. Opportunities will find you.
Yeah.
It's that's the way it is. Wherever you are and whatever circumstance you're in, if God has called you to minister to his people, minister to his people. You don't have
Right.
to have a position to do that. You don't have to, and you weren't looking for a position. You were just looking to help.
Right.
And
At
now
that
20
point,
and now
absolutely. Yeah.
26 years later. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And,
that's
and and we've seen a lot of ebbs and flows. We've seen, honestly, several death cycles within the North Hinsdale Community Church, and
mhm,
it was pretty painful at times, because when
mhm,
we first got there, the church had really been suffering in
mhm,
terms of loss. And one of the things I prayed when we accepted the pastor was, God, don't let people just follow, because at
mhm.
that time, and it happened still, people are just jumping from church to church to church. I'm like, don't let that. I don't want people following because I'm the new thing.
New
And
guy, yeah. Yeah.
God honored that prayer to a T. Like, it was. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Well, what did you pray? Right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
right. Yeah.
but and then, the big thing is going into COVID, and we talked about this some.
Mhm.
The Sunday we shut the doors going into that lockdown, we had 6 people who were, that was our group. We'd have a couple here and there, but I'm like, I'm never going to open the doors again. You know,
Yeah.
I'm doing the math financially. You
Yeah.
know, people aren't coming to church; they're not tithing.
Yeah.
There's not going to be money to pay for whatever. And then who's going to be alive at the end of this horrible
Yeah.
pandemic? And one of the things that really struck me early into the lockdowns was I'd read Facebook, and everybody, it's doom and gloom. There people
Yeah.
are terrified, and and,
Mhm.
and I started meditating on that, and in the words of Jesus, he kept talking about the end times. So is in the days of Noah. And
Yeah.
I started really thinking about that, and I'm like, this isn't the end. COVID is not the end of mankind because we're holed up, locked into our homes. In the days of Noah, everybody lived life as normal. And so I just started doing the Facebook Live Wednesday nights. Just a time of prayer and a time to just try to encourage people and like, hey folks, whatever this is, it's going to pass. We're going to go. And people started following. And I one day I go get the mail and some guy, I'll leave nameless. Hey Mike, I love what you're doing on Facebook. You're bringing so many people so much hope. Sent me a check for $1,000. I just want to bless your church.
Wow.
And then, and when we locked the doors to the church, I told the treasurer, whatever happens, do not think of. She was worried about paying me. I'm like, do not pay me, because it's more important we can open the doors than whether or not God's going to take care of Tina and I.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks into this, she calls me and she says, Mike, I'm still paying you. I go, what do you mean? I told you not. She goes, we've got more money coming in now than we've ever had coming in my time as being a treasurer. It's weirdest thing. It wasn't weird. It's God. And then it just, the money started coming in and, we just, so I went from Wednesday to Sunday mornings doing Facebook Live. So we got this, I've got this whole following on the Facebook Live too, that just, at first it was just Hinsdale. Now it's all over the country. People will chime in. And then like I hit in Japan, I've been in Africa. I've never left the comfort of home to get there, but it's just like, wow, God, you're really just honoring this. And the other commitment I made was one of the things I stopped doing was I'm not getting political about anything because God has called me to preach the gospel, and my politics are the gospel of the kingdom.
Amen.
Because the best politics that we have, that we could have on earth, they're flawed at best.
Right.
So, so I'm like, I just got away from that. And people would try to suck me into political debates. One of them was my cousin, Eddie, who is a unique story. But, and so I'm preaching the word of God. I'm preaching the gospel. I'm not getting into all this other stuff. And God just started honoring it. And today, the North Hinsdale Community Church, we're about 40 strong now. And, the faithfulness of just sticking to the word of God, preaching the word. During this time also, I stopped in Hinsdale Walmart and I get out of my truck. It'd been a particularly hard day. And there's this guy sitting in a car, head's all bandaged up. He's smoking a cigarette. And he goes, hey, how's the recruiting business going? I'm like, what? He goes, you're sure? How's the recruiting? And I'm wearing a Christian t-shirt. Heaven is my home. I'm just here recruiting.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, it's a labor, or something like that. He goes, and he takes a drag of his cigarette. He goes, keep preaching. The word of God will never return void. It will accomplish. And I'm like, thank you. Have a good day.
I've never met an angel.
I'm walking into Walmart. Jesus, it's just like you to send some guy smoking a cigarette to rebuke me, like in the Walmart parking lot.
There's an interesting caveat to what you've just shared. Boy, this hour goes quick, doesn't it? 40% in the United States of America, 40% of the churches that closed during COVID never reopened.
Yeah.
And 40% of the people who stopped going to church during COVID never came back.
Never went back.
So the interesting thing is that you remain faithful to your little flock of people. I tell people all the time, and it took me a few years to really learn this. Jesus said, I will build my church. He never commanded me to build his church. He never commanded Peter or James or John to. He said to them, feed my sheep.
Yep.
He said, I will build my church. You feed my sheep. And I came to understand a number of years ago now that my responsibility was not to build the church. My responsibility was to feed whoever walks through that door.
Absolutely.
you know, and to see them as the sheep of God's pasture. And you were faithful with your 6. Let's just use that number. And you remain faithful to them as a pastor. You pastored them, you shepherded them. And that's what as I said, I had a conversation with another young man this week, and I said, don't chase ministry. Pursue people.
Right.
Minister to people. It is. I'm doing I've been doing a walkthrough in the book of Acts, and one of the things that I noticed is the people, especially in the early chapters of the book of Acts, they weren't pursuing building the church or establishing an organization. They were just winning people to Jesus. And then you read this phrase, and the Lord added daily to the church such as should be saved. When I read that through new eyes, I went, we've been doing this all wrong. There's the whole, you work with a denomination or something, and there's this pressure, to perform. There's this pressure to build the church up, and maybe you get a bigger church sometime. And and I think it's sad. And I want to say this as a word of commendation to you, that you weren't in North Hinsdale looking for a better opportunity. You ministered to the people God had given you. And I remember reading about Jesus sitting on the seashore after the resurrection with his disciples and saying to Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yeah, I love you. And he said, then feed my sheep.
Yeah.
And he did that 3 times. And I think we've lost something in that, that North Hinsdale's a small community. The demographics say Michael McCosker and North Hinsdale Community Church are not going to become a mega church. Just demographically, right. It's not going to happen. But God has honored, to go to the I just learned this week about people that are coming to your church that I know. I didn't know they were coming over there.
Yeah.
And I preached several times last year over there, and there were maybe 10, 15 people. And now all of a sudden there's this spurt that God is giving increase, and God is giving increase to your faithfulness. And you're a testimony to young men that want to be used by God. And I think you have to say, do you want to build a big ministry? Are you looking to build a name? Or are you looking to serve God?
Yeah.
And then, you serve him. And if you don't have a position yet, you still have the calling.
Right.
And
right.
Pursue your calling. Don't pursue a job, pursue your calling. And God, if you are faithful here's the thing, sheep, people, are the assets of the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. And God entrusts us with a certain number of those assets. To some he gave 10, to some he gave 5, to you he gave 6, or whatever that number is. And just like in that parable of the faithful and the unfaithful servants, the ones who were given a number of assets, they invested them and they multiplied them. And at the end of it, the master came and not only honored them for doing that, he added to what they had.
Right.
And the one who said, I'm just going to manage this thing until I get a better deal, he will probably never get a better deal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Honestly, like at one point when I was young into this, I was thinking I'll be there 5 years and then I'll try to move on to something bigger, get some experience, and God kind of kept blocking that.
Uh-huh.
And no, stay where you're at, stay where you're at, stay where you're at. And find, because as a young guy going into ministry, your goal is to get to full-time ministry.
Right.
I have been bivocational or trivocational my entire life. And I finally got to the point where, God, if this is the lot that you have, I'll do it. I don't care. I just want to be faithful to you, Lord Jesus. And the driving factor is when my life is said and done on this earth, I want to hear those words, well done. And
Right.
it's so get out of your own head,
Mhm.
and die to your desires and aspirations
Mhm.
so that his will, his work can be done. And one of the great things has been is, and I'm not just in a sense a pastor to the North Hinsdale Community Church. I'm a
Mhm.
pastor to the town of Hinsdale.
Yes, that's right.
I've come on board as the chaplain of the fire department. I don't do a lot with them now,
Mhm.
but when something big happens, the first phone call they might make is, "We need Mike to be here." Now
Yeah.
they kind of look at it as a lucky rabbit's foot, but it's
Whatever.
opportunity to share the gospel and to give
Mhm.
hope. So
I remember one time somebody, a fella, we were sitting in Ray's diner and eating breakfast one morning, and I walked in, and he said, "Oh, look, it's the Bishop of Clark Street." Uh,
yeah,
and that was and he was actually kind of being snide about it. He was actually a pretty nice guy, but he was kind of rough around the edges and stuff. And he said, "Yeah, the Bishop of Clark Street." And I looked at him, I patted him on the back, I sat down beside of him, and I said, I wear that like a badge of honor,
yeah, absolutely.
because our church is really invested in our community right around us, even though we live in a little bit larger community than you do. We're really, I mean, tonight I was over at the food pantry and we had 60, 70 people walking through, and they all know us.
Yep.
They know we pray for them. I have one guy that I hadn't seen in a while. I asked him how he was doing. His eyes filled up with tears. He said it's been hard. I was able to pray with him and encourage him. And I tell you, we miss ministry when we're searching for position.
Yep.
And I know, and let me just say this: there are so many communities that would not have an effective gospel ministry if men were not willing to be bivocational.
Right.
It's just not the money is not there. I mean, we struggle here in Brattleboro. Our community, our people are faithful, but they don't have much.
Right.
And we don't have any guys that write $10,000 checks or that kind of a thing. And one of the reasons why, when after Brian had been on staff for a while, I stepped back earlier than I wanted to in terms of full time, because we couldn't afford to pay two full-time men, and it was time for somebody else to be the full-time guy. And I believe God called Brian to that. But I've been in the ministry for more than 50 years, and I have never looked for position. That was one of the things that my mentor drove home to me, was serve God, shepherd his people. God will put you where, and I've driven truck, I've sold satellite systems, I've done everything I needed to do at times when the money wasn't there. But a fellow said to me one day, he said, I think this was also in Ray's place, because I used to print his menus and placemats, and he didn't pay me, he fed me, which was a great deal as far as I was concerned. Ray was a great cook.
Oh, he made a prime rib hash.
Oh my goodness.
So
So this guy said to me, he said, it must be great to get paid for what you enjoy doing. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, they pay you to preach, and you obviously, they pay you to preach. I said, they don't pay me to preach. He said, they don't? I said, no, they pay me to do all the things I wouldn't do if they didn't pay me. Preaching is not one of them. I'm going to preach. Yeah. I'll preach to a lamppost if that's all there is there to do it. But I don't preach to get paid.
Right.
All the years of traveling and everything, I've never charged the church. I say, take up an offering, make sure I get gas money. And God has always met our needs, and I've never lacked for a place to preach.
Yeah.
I've never lacked. And I just want to commend you and your testimony to anybody else who is out there saying, I want to serve God, but I don't have a position to serve God. You don't need one.
No.
You just need to serve God. A young man asked me one time, how do I know the will of God for my life? I said, it's simple. Whatever God puts in your hand to do today, do it.
Right.
And you are in the will of God. It's not some big mysterious thing, the voice from heaven with a lot of reverb in it saying, go to Africa. It's whatever I put in your hand to do it. And then
Mike
God will
Gantt
prosper.
That's
Do
Mike
what?
Gantt in the microphone saying, go to Africa.
Yeah, right. I turned the reverb up on it. But so it looks to me like you're pretty happy right where you are.
We are, and it's funny because 4 years ago I'd taken a different education position that caused Tina and I to move to get closer to it. And I told the church at that point, in 21, like, I'm going to give you guys 1 more year so you figure out a succession plan for someone else. And we got 6 months into it, and the board called me in and they said, Mike, we're not just looking for a pastor, we're looking for you. We can't replace you. You're a friend, you're a brother, you're a, and I'm like, well, and at that point, Michael and Sarah just got married. We knew grandkids run away. And I'm like, look, we're not going anywhere. We'll just stay. And at that point, that's when everything just started booming in the church. And I'm like, God, I don't want to mess this up.
No.
So, so I just yielded my plans, and we're very happy. It gets tiring, but God has blessed us with some wonderful people. The family you mentioned that I served with him as he was an elder at Agape back when I was a youth pastor, and his son was in my youth group. I mean, they've been a blessing, and we've got a lot of blessings in the church, and it's just been so cool. And like no one's ever written me a check for $10,000, but every Christmas I have people walk up and they say, here's $200, $300, $500, $1,000. Go buy Christmas gifts for people. And we're taking on 20 kids or something every year that we're buying Christmas for. And it, just people, because they've caught our vision, or it's really Tina's vision for it.
Yeah.
But it's so cool what God has been doing and how he's blessed us. But he's blessing the North Hinsdale community as well.
Well, and I think that is so important. I look, you can go into any town in the state of Vermont. That's where my circle is. Probably in New Hampshire, it's similar. And as you're driving into town, invariably you will find a steeple.
Yep.
Where there once was a church.
Absolutely.
Whether there's one there or not, but there once was. And I know that I think there's something like 251 distinct communities in Vermont, and more than 60-70% of them have no church that is teaching the Word of God. The church is a dance hall or an antique shop or something, and that's a sad thing. And I think part of it is there's just not enough men who are willing to. I say to people, God did not call me to a church. He called me to a community.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons we've never left, because when we came here, we felt, no, God has called us to this community, and our heart is really with the community. Right. And I've partnered with Agape Christian Fellowship, and it's been a good partnership. There have been hard times and difficult times, and you lived through some of them with us. But overall, it's an amazing group of people to have the privilege of pastoring. And it's a church that has a heart to serve. But we serve our neighborhood, we serve our community, and we every once in a while I read in the paper that someone has died, and it'll say, this person was a communicant of Agape Christian Fellowship, and I go, really? I don't know this person, because they live in the neighborhood. Right. They know that they can come and get food. They know they can come and get clothing. If somebody in their family dies, they call Brian or I. We go do the service. We do the funeral for them. we've done, you know, as you said, for years and years and years, camping programs, and we used to empty the streets out on Clark and Canal Street and drag them up to Camp Wabanong or up to White River. And so when you get invested in a community is when you can really begin to minister to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we've run out of time.
Okay.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed chatting with you and letting people get to see the perspective of a man who's made a commitment to a community, not just to a church and a paycheck and a building, but to a community. And I believe that the growth you've seen is just the beginning. I think you're going to see going to be an interesting challenge.
I'll take it. Yeah.
I'm looking at it. If you see the kind of growth over the next couple of years that you've seen in the last couple of years, you're going to have some real problems on your hands. Yeah. Which are going to be fun to watch. You know, I was sitting there the other day when we went over for Bill Waite's service, and I think, wow, Michael's already about half full. You know, if he has continued growth, challenges, man. But you know, God is good, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have been a part of your life, and I hope to continue to be a part of your life. I want to appreciate you for coming on and for sharing with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been fun. God bless you, my friend. I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Say goodbye to these other people. All right.
Good night, folks. Nice to be with you tonight.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Well, that was young Michael McCosker. Been a boy in my life since he was, 16, 17 years old. And we've watched him grow. And man, have we watched him grow into an amazing leader and shepherd in the kingdom of God. For the folks on Facebook who missed the show tonight, I will download the video and I will upload it to my Facebook page. I want everybody to experience Michael's testimony and what God has done from him. In the meantime, this has been Night Mike. I'm your host, Michael Gantt. God bless you. Check with me on the 2nd of September on Live Mike, 9 o'clock in the morning with my friend Kevin Skipworth. God bless you. Good night.